In November 2007, 4 teachers were given the opportunity of a lifetime.
Absolutely incredible.
A chance to spend a month in Antarctica.
You get up out of your tent in the morning and you've just got this amazing view, beautiful sunshine, mountain range in the background, pretty much white for as far as you can see.
They explored the science.
It's one of the first ever lichens collected at the Henderson Glacier.
And discovered themselves.
At the moment, I'm sort of a bit fed up. There are several things about life in Antarctica which really get on your nerves.
While at home, their students experienced it with them.
I've got a class full of children here. All right. They're dying to speak to you.
This is the story of how they got there and what they brought back for the benefit of themselves and their students. "31-year-old Amy took up rock climbing to belie her fears of just how treacherous Antarctica can be.
One of my biggest worries was that I'd be falling down a crevasse and I wouldn't be able to get out. I haven't done a huge amount of climbing. Obviously in Antarctica we're going to be roped up together in any dangerous areas, and if we do fall down a crevasse, we need to be able to get ourselves out, potentially. So I started climbing just to really develop those skills.
Amy's science project for the expedition is the study of lichens, micro-plant life that grow on rocks.
They're one of the only things on the planet that has managed to work out a way to live in such an extreme environment. I'm going to try and see if I can find anything new in Antarctica, because nobody's ever looked in that area before, and it's going to be really, really exciting if we can find a new species. Most of the ones we're expecting to find are going to be in really deep crevices, so we need to try and find a way to try and get them out. And we're just trying to work out what kind of tools are going to be the best and just get a bit of a practice doing that.
You look down here, maybe we could take a
section out there.
Amy's fellow biologist Ian is also looking for lichen, but his project is specifically looking for the microscopic organisms that live within it, called tardigrades.
It's like we've hit a barren spot. Tardigrades are ubiquitous on the planet. They're just hardly anywhere where you can't find them. In Antarctica, there's only about 4 species of these little creatures that have been found, and we don't know which ones necessarily were going to turn up in this sort of environment or in what numbers. So a lot of it is simply, at this stage, seeing what's there and whether it's there at all. This feeble little bit of growth is probably a fairly realistic idea of the sort of thing we might find in Antarctica. So we've got a few mosses growing in the rock here.
However feeble a discovery, it still has to be logged meticulously.
5 metres.
That's at 665 metres. Yeah.
GPS 61 degrees.
Despite Ian and Amy having found very little to study, there is an abundance of subject matter for geographer Ruth.
Node 1's sterile sample.
Her project is looking at holes melted into the ice called cryoconite holes. These are caused by rocks and dust settling on the glacier. The rock absorbs the sun's heat, then melts a hole down into the ice. It is the abundance and distribution of these holes that Ruth is measuring incrementally.
The argument is that as more of these cryoconite holes develop, then they're going to create, essentially if they join together, they'll create rivers either on the surface of the glacier or beneath the glacier. And then when those rivers begin to form, then they lubricate the bottom of the glacier, which actually causes the whole thing to move much more quickly. So it's linked up with issues to do with climate change and global warming. So these are all sterile, and basically what you've got to do is...
One of the main reasons for being on the glacier prior to going to Antarctica is to test the equipment and procedures. And already problems are coming to light.
Here it's practical to open your coat and stuff your notebook down your jacket, but in Antarctica probably not. You're not going to be wanting to undo zips, anything. And here we're quite happy to waggle cameras around and keep them outside for a long time with no protection on. In Antarctica the battery will just drain instantly.
Dealing with such tiny samples, that these gloves that we were thinking of using, we just can't manipulate our fingers well enough to be able to even open the bags or get the samples in. Everything's like you're trying to do it on space or something. It's all difficult.
Despite Amy's rock climbing experience at home, she and the rest of the team aren't prepared for the crevasse rescue training, imperative for anyone visiting the Antarctic.
The scenario is here, somebody's gone down the crevasse, there's the middle person that's holding them, going, quick, help, and the person at the back has come forwards and has set up an anchor, and we're going to start setting up the whole hoist system.
In Antarctica, it is Carolyn who will be in charge of their safety throughout the entire trip.
You know, Antarctica is not totally safe, so we're trying to cover all bases as much as possible, so that if that worst case scenario does happen, they are armed with the knowledge to be able to do something about it. And these guys are really good. They're picking this stuff up really quickly. You know, even if all they can do is set up an anchor and get the whole system safe, then that's a real positive thing. Well done. Well done.
It comes back to the original reason why we selected them in the first place and why they've been so good today, is that we didn't select outdoor education teachers with a slight science background. We've got 4 science and geography teachers with minimal outdoor background, and that's what we need. We need them to get the science across and deliver it, which they can do in the field. We can train in that outdoor education slant to it. So no great issues there. You know, it's a slow process, but they all get in there.
Cold and tired, the team leave the glacier and end their stay in Norway with a debrief at the bottom of the mountain.
Is there anything you need to change about your science projects from our point?
A time to iron out any problems before the expedition proper.
Going to be robust enough.
There was the issue about sort of contaminating the sample site, so if we're tramping over it, how we sort of minimise that and to what extent.
I think it's been fantastic coming away to Norway, to a really different environment. Okay, it's not exactly the same as in Antarctica, but it's just made me realise, I think, a lot about, you know, the basics of looking after yourself and keeping yourself warm, how time-consuming it is to go to the toilet, how time-consuming it is to cook your food, and just doing the day-to-day survival things. So I think I'll probably go back home and I'll have a sort of reassess some of the kit that I've got and be a bit more sort of ruthless with taking out a lot of the things that I'd carted around that I didn't really need.
I actually think the aspects of getting on together as a team is very important. I mean, the nice thing is that, you know, Phil and I are going to share a tent for a month, and you always worry that you're going to drive each other around the bend, you know. And I feel as if we've got on well and we've managed to develop a sort of tent routine. So it's nice to go to Antarctica knowing that we can survive without hating each other within a few hours.
But the expedition to Antarctica is still 2 months away. And as the team head back to Britain, sponsorship and funding for it is still uppermost in their minds. Not least, Ian.
As well as the £10,000 that I've had to raise, I've also got to stand the loss of 2 months' salary and the cost of something over £2,000 to £2,400 worth of cold weather gear and other things that I'll need to purchase, and that is very, very tough on a teacher's salary. In conversation with the other 3 who are going, they'd all arranged basically to take unpaid leave, but I think that they're in a very different situation from me, with teenage children, you know, going to university and school, a big mortgage.
But this is not a good time to be having cold feet.
I don't think he realises now the reality that because he's signed the participation agreement, he's not only incurring all the costs of his training in terms of food and accommodation, but now we're packing this, he's incurring all the costs of this. The longer he delays, then he'll start to incur the shipping costs. So he's got to find 7,000, but if he pulls out, he may have to find nearly 3,500.
Red, like a red?
On the verge of pulling out, but desperate to make the trip, Ian doubles his efforts in attempting to raise all the money needed.
The scientists of the survey...
Peter Fuchs also comes to his rescue at Ian's auction at school.
£17 I'm bid. It's £18. I just felt I had to grit my teeth, resolve that I was going to raise as much money as I possibly could in as many ways as I could to try and cover at least some of my costs and just go for it. Done.
Essentially what I sort of had in mind, and maybe your ideas can sort of shape some of this.
As the expedition departure date looms, the teachers are also keen to develop the enthusiasm of students, both in their own schools and beyond.
Really, for me, a big part was trying to raise awareness in school and in the local area as well about the fact I was going to be away and why I was going to be away, so that when we were actually in Antarctica, people were, you know, following us, because it's much more difficult to do that once you've left. You know, you can explain to students what you're doing and giving them an opportunity to ask questions and giving them an opportunity to be involved is much easier when you're still here. So that was probably my focus in the sort of 2 months before we actually went.
The night before leaving Britain, and the team meet at the expedition's HQ for final preparations. With them is Ian, whose last-minute fundraising efforts have paid off.
And that's just the same weight.
The actual 4-week expedition, although it's going to be quite physically demanding in the cold and the isolation, they'll be able to cope with that because they've kind of gone through an 18-month training period of determination and working together to get here. So they've done the hard bit, now they've just got to go and make it happen.
The expedition begins with a short stay in Chile, where the team have to wait for good weather before catching their charter flight to Antarctica. It's a chance for them to contemplate their forthcoming adventure and for one last check of their kit. With clear weather, the final leg is flown in an old Russian bomber. Its bomb aimer's window provides a tantalizing glimpse of the continent below. After an uncomfortable 4-hour flight, they finally arrive on the blue ice of Patriot Hills, Antarctica. 600 miles from the South Pole, it would be their first taste of what life would be like at the bottom of the world.
I don't think it meant too many points. I imagine what it would be like, because there was always tomorrow's school, or there was a bit of fundraising to do, or there was, I don't know, just something else going on. Never could have imagined it like this, even if I had sat down and thought about it.
In the next episode, life in Antarctica hits home.
13 days since I've washed my hair. It's not a pretty sight.
And their science projects become problematic.
The holes are frozen. You've got to do a lot of digging to get at them.
And they undertake an expedition into the depths of the continent.
There's no wildlife, there's no humans. They've been totally on their own for the best part of 3 weeks in the middle of nowhere.